Senator Van Hollen of Maryland's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you and the ranking member for holding this hearing. Thank you to all of our witnesses. Mr. Singh, you made the point earlier that we have a lot of positive incentives to offer countries in terms of our global interactions, diplomacy, development, incentives for more economic investment by America's private sector, security assistance, but that sanctions are an important tool. I think we all recognize that we have to put sanctions in context, that it's one tool, but a very important tool, and I think all of you have made those points. I would like to follow up on the issue of the price cap. I thought this was an innovative approach taken by the Biden administration with our G7 partners. I want to applaud the Europeans for recognizing the importance of moving off of Russian oil after too long of a dependence of many of those countries on Russian oil. And I did hear your testimony, Mr. Singh, pointing out that the revenue, Russian revenue from year over year has dropped 50% from the export of crude oil. And of course, this was only put in place in December. So we haven't yet seen the reduction in oil revenues captured in Russia's overall GDP figures. We'll have to see what impact that has over the next year. And of course, they just put in place the refined petroleum products. But as with all sanctions, there are people who are already fast at work trying to evade them, to sell, and obviously Russia has an interest in selling above the price cap. Can you talk about additional enforcement measures you might take? Former Senator Toomey and I were looking at a number of secondary sanctions options. They have pluses and minuses, but we also know that there are efforts to circumvent the price cap. Can you talk about additional measures we can take on the enforcement side?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. So you're right. Russia absolutely has an incentive to sell oil above the cap, but its customers don't. So we've really given them the gift of bargaining power. We've said to them, look, if you pay above $60 a barrel, you've got to find your own oil service providers for shipping, for insurance, for trade finance. And that's quite costly. Now, what can we do if there is evasion? Look, I think over time, we can find ways to reduce the price at which the cap is set, just to clamp down further on Russia's ability to sell at prices that flatter its budget revenues. If lowering the cap doesn't work, and you still have a lot of evasion from countries that are importing from Russia, I think we have two options. Either A, we can offer a better price to those countries and allow them to meet their energy needs with domestic production or maybe from production in third countries. The other option is to use quiet private diplomacy and say, look, if you are continuing to purchase oil at levels that benefit Putin and go against the goals of the cap, which are to minimize his revenues while keeping global energy supplies constant, we have options and we can use them. Now, I don't think we should threaten countries in public. I would use that as a last defense, as a last resort. And I don't think we're quite there yet.
Well, I agree with you. We should be steadily reducing the cap, tightening the cap, because I think there's still a long way to go to get to that marginal cost of production for Russia. Obviously, we want to bring along our coalition as part of that. Let me turn to China for a moment. And Mr. Wolf, and then anybody else who wants to comment with respect to the Commerce Department actions. I was a supporter of the actions that the Trump administration took with respect to Huawei, putting them on the entities list. I think that did have an impact on Huawei, and I really appreciate the Biden administration's effort to really broaden the export control list so it doesn't focus just on one company, but deals with the exports of highly sensitive chips and semiconductors that can be used in China's military, and taking a very broad approach, using our sort of long arm power based on origin and U.S. IP to apply these restrictions to other countries. How effective do you think that's been to date? What can we do to further encourage its enforcement? And what is your assessment of how we can use that model going forward?
No, excellent question. And I think to date it's been very effective because the Commerce Department used an all-of-the-above strategy of controlling exports from the U.S., controlling activities of U.S. persons, controlling foreign-made items that are made with U.S. Technology and software. And it's been extraordinarily effective. The main essence of my prepared remarks is to make such controls more effective and as importantly, less counterproductive for U.S. industry to convince the allies who also produce similar technologies and have people who can provide similar services to adopt in their systems the same types of prohibitions, so to level the playing field for U.S. industry and to deprive the end users in China that you're referring to of the items of concern. And your question is an evidence of this broader than classical strategic export control concept that I referred to at the beginning of a new way of thinking that's needed, and the U.S. should take the lead in articulating with its close allies. So it's been very effective, but there's a lot more to be done. And on the enforcement, it will be inherently difficult because you are dealing with essentially commercial items that are very small, that are foreign-made, that are outside the United States, that get incorporated into commercial items. And again, this is where an equal degree of coordination and alignment of allied export control enforcement authorities, which trail behind the licensing and policy officials, is absolutely critical.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.